Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go on now with the wonderful Sam Bowen, if I could... what? Where are you? Forgive me. Sarah, come up. Oh well, it can happen. What I noted down in that last presentation, it came up on the screen, these are the words that the young people who did that film themselves came up with, and they are putting it out to fellow young people. They're 4 words: duty, courage, loss, resilience. So I thought that is a hell of a message for young people to be putting out to fellow young people and the community in general. I thought that was a really quite extraordinary thing to see, that they came up with that. They recognized what this was about: duty, courage, loss, and resilience. And we're going on now on the theme of making connections and engaging with those communities. And Sarah, Grants Manager, Museums Association, is going to talk about, well, I think you're going to talk about, the perils of getting the equity wrong in the arrangement with local organizations. The peril being that, you know, if you own the collection, you end up, if you're not careful, being the default lead partner, which might or might not be a good thing. So these are tips on how to get it right from, well, you know, we couldn't have a better speaker on the subject. Sam, over to you.
Thank you very much. What a lovely introduction. Yes, that's exactly spot on. So I'm here today. I'm the Grant Manager at the Museums Association, and I'm here because of specifically my role working on the Esmée Fairbairn Communities and Collections Fund. It offers core grants to single museum organisations for strategic development of inclusive collections work, but also, and very new to us, we offer partnership project grants for museums and community organisations working equitably with collections to achieve shared aims for inclusion. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to do that today, but the good news is we have money for that as well, which the fund opens again in 2026, so look out for the dates. So, as I said, partnership funding is a really new area for us. It's come out of the evolution of the Collections Fund, and we're really looking in the partnership applications for equitable relationships there with partners. I'll just talk you through a couple of examples of projects that we funded in the past that are really, this is actually before we introduced the partnership funding, but they contributed to our decision making about the direction of travel of the Collections Fund. So the first one I'll tell you a little bit about is National Museums Liverpool. So we funded them in 2014 for work with an organisation called Luma Creations. They are a charity dedicated to celebrating and promoting Latin American art, culture and people, particularly in the Northwest. So they want to work with National Museums Liverpool to shape the reinterpretation of their Latin American communities in the World Museum. And this came about because of an object called the Mixteca Codex, which is pictured on the slide. It's a really rare and very, very beautiful Mesoamerican folded book. It's so fragile that it can only be displayed once a decade, and that time is coming up again. This time the World Museum wanted to make sure that the display wasn't just here's the codex, but was a bigger thing that celebrated the Latin American community. And in order to do that, they wanted to make connections, and that's where Luma came on board. It was really clear from the very initial conversations that Luma had been very much a part of designing this project. They turned up to the pre-application funding chat, which is very, very unusual at the time, and it was clear that they'd shaped a lot of the decision-making around this project, not National Museums Liverpool. It was a really unusual approach. And the other example I want to talk about is Leeds Museums and Galleries, who also came to us in 2014 and also came to us with a community partner already in place. Their community partner is Space 2, who are an arts and social change organisation, which is based in Gipton in East Leeds, which is an area where there's very low audience figures for the museum, so an area the museum really wanted to engage with more. The two organisations had worked together already and devised a project called the Dead Plant Society, which I think is a wonderful name, to connect herbarium collections with the social and historical stories of East Leeds. And they're going to do a range of creative approaches to look at those collections. Again, both organisations were present in that pre-application conversation, and in this case, they told us that they were really keen to progress their relationship so that museum was not anymore the lead partner. They wanted to work towards a much more equitable way of working and make sure that both organisations gained as much from the work as one another. And they also wanted to acknowledge that Space 2 are the experts on the community that they want to engage with here. And that's kind of the essence of what I want to talk to you about today. I'm not going to go into full details of what we did in our 2024 review of the Communities and Collections Fund. It is all on our website, but there's just some brief headlines here on the slide. But this review, as well as our knowledge from projects of the way that participatory practice was evolving, showed us that with the increasing prominence of partnership working between museums and community organisations, some guidance was needed just to make sure that the kind of work that was being undertaken got maximum impact and could be achieved by even more museums, even those with not necessarily loads of experience in that area. Now, equitable partnerships are the natural evolution of participatory practice, I would say, and there is loads of resources out there to support this way of working. Therefore, what we've done is we've produced a toolkit that brings together lessons learned from work that we've funded, wisdom from community organisations who have worked with museums, who very generously spoke to me about this, and also all of the information that's available in the wider sector. And I'll just talk you briefly through this resource today. We've produced it to help both museums and community organisations who are thinking of working with museums. So you might already be partners, you might not, but this guidance should help you to evolve working practices into more formal, equitable partnerships. And this should benefit not only participants, visitors, or the people accessing the organisations, but the organisations themselves. So it should help both organisations to develop. The next slide is just to show some of the organisations who I spoke to when I produced this toolkit. So we spoke to Luma Creations, as I've already mentioned. There's also Alison Patterson from Blackwall Community Centre in the North East. They're working with Durham University Museums, and Alison speaks with incredible passion and excitement about working with museums, but she's also very honest. Then there's Purple Stars, Rick's inclusive researchers, who did not hold back when they were sharing their personal and lived experience of working with museums as a group of individuals with learning disabilities. And they've worked with a lot of museums, so they were incredibly helpful. And then I also spoke with Descendants, who are a London-based charity who've worked with Paxton House in Scotland, miles and miles apart geographically, but they've worked together really effectively on various projects exploring the legacy of slavery in that house. And it's really important that we acknowledge the part that these people played in producing the guidance that we've got, as they are very much the experts when it comes to community perspective of museums. The resource itself breaks down various stages of the processes of ensuring equity in relationships, so from establishing relationships in the first place to undertaking the work and then to thinking about how you can maintain these relationships longer term. All the way through the toolkit, there's lots of links to resources, there's case studies to help you in practical ways. And what I would say is other organisations have been working equitably in partnership with one another for some time now. It's just that museums are a little bit newer to this game. So we're not reinventing the wheel. There's loads of resources already out there. So we've just pulled them together in a more central place to make it a little bit easier. So I'll talk you through the 3 stages of sort of working in equitable partnership. In the first stage, you'll be deciding who to work with. You probably have a history of working with an organisation. That might be why you're going to go down this road, and that's likely to be a big factor. It's probably the case that both parties are now willing to formalise this relationship and are happy to have open conversations about what's worked in the past and what hasn't, and how that can shape future ways of working. If you haven't got a history of working together with the organisation, that's fine too, but I'd say look out for organisations with common goals and who can provide the expertise that you need. The toolkit suggests, as I said, it's not just for museums, it's for those community organisations. So it suggests what museums might seek from community partners, but also what they should seek when they're working with you. So they'll be asking questions around your motivation for the work, and they'll want assurances that it's genuine. So in beginning these relationships, you need to show that you're open to listening to their ideas and addressing reservations. And you need to create a space that allows that type of honest conversation to take place. Don't see your museum as the expert body in this partnership, but instead acknowledge your parents' partners' expertise. And expertise came up a lot in the interviews I had with community organisations. Museums are usually seeking to work with community partners because they have something we don't. And usually that's a relationship with people we want to reach. So you need to acknowledge that, and that needs to be respected. It can't be a top-down relationship. You as a museum are going to learn as much, if not more, from your community partner as they will from you. And that's where power dynamics comes into play. So it's really important to have honest and open conversations at the outset to acknowledge any power imbalance. Often this will be around things like the perception of the museum from the people you want to reach, which might lean towards the negative, but otherwise you wouldn't need a community partner to help you with this because you could do it yourself. Museums might be seen as a trusted source of information to a lot of people, but to others it could be just a really intimidating building where people worry that they're going to be judged if they go in. And that's where your community organisation can come in. Because the people that feel that way are probably not visiting you in order for you to address that and dispel those myths. So the community organisation can help you reach and build trust with people who you are not reaching, but only if that organisation feels comfortable enough to tell you what they think the barriers are, and if you are open enough to listen to that. You'll probably not be able to remove all of the barriers, but acknowledging that they exist means that you can minimise problems further down the line. And at this stage as well, you need to establish why you are both doing this work. There should be some shared goals so that both parties are clear about what the partnership is trying to achieve. Both organisations are likely to have their own goals too, so you might want to learn more about your collections from a different perspective. They might want to be able to provide a cultural experience to the users of their service. But the shared goals are the things that are going to really unite you and unite this work. There's lots of different tools you can use to record all of that stuff, so you could produce a partnership agreement, for example, or a statement of interest. Whatever title you call it, that's not the important thing. The important thing is that it details the formal division of roles and responsibilities, ways that you'll communicate, and what you'll do if either party wants to cancel or terminate that relationship. And remember, this needs to be done in a collaborative way. It's not you presenting a fully formed document for them to sign. It's working together to produce that agreement. It's the first of many collaborations you'll be having, so it's a really good opportunity to set up the work as you mean to go on, and that's equitably. The next section explores some of the things you should do throughout the period of time that you're undertaking the work, whether it's project-based or whether it's longer term. And communication, I would say, is the cornerstone of effective partnerships. At the outset, as I've just said, you should have decided how you'll meet and how often, things like that. But you do need to make sure that you review that regularly and make sure it's working for everyone. Build in flexibility. There's going to be key milestones, of course. You'll need to do things at certain times, so you'll need to communicate those. But make sure that you can adapt and change other communications. Because if I've learned anything from supporting the Collections Fund for 8 years now, it's that things change all of the time, and you need to be able to change your methods and plans to adapt to that. And that's where your shared objectives are going to be helpful too, because if those stay constant, the ways that you achieve them can change if needed as circumstances and situations change. It's really rare that a project will progress as it was originally planned. So if you expect that and build in moments of reflection, it can help you explore what you might want to change and how together in an equitable way. Which brings me on to decision making. So equitable relationships will require equitable